And Major Garrett is at the White House now. Major, thanks for joining us here tonight. The vice president spent the day in Janesville, Wisconsin with Speaker Ryan, Secretary Price, and also Senator Johnson. And he was asked by reporters whether he knew Sessions had spoken to the Russians. Here's what he said.
No, I was not aware of Jeff Sessions' meeting, nor would I have expected been. The President and I have full confidence in the Attorney General. He is a man of integrity. As the President said, he could have answered the question more clearly, but it was clearly unintentional. I think he's corrected the record appropriately.
So then later, Major, you hear him echoing the president's stance that Sessions is an honest man. Now, following calls to have him appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee, late Friday, that committee chairman, Chuck Grassley, released a statement saying that there are no plans to ask Sessions to come before the committee. So here's my question to you. In this case, where what might be smoke has become the fire?
Well, it's certainly become a fire as far as Democrats are concerned, and the White House and the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley are trying to do everything they can to minimize the political fallout from the last 24 hours and make this mostly about smoke and say there is no underlying fire. What Democrats want to know is, when asked twice, once in open testimony and once in a question during the confirmation process about contacts with the Trump campaign and the Russian ambassador, or Russians generally, why then Senator Jeff Sessions wasn't more forthcoming about, one, what she describes, and I think it's fair to say, based on what we know now, was a glancing and casual interaction with lots of ambassadors at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, then this sit-down meeting in his office as a senator in late September. Why not disclose that? And why only publicly acknowledge that, in those encounters rather, after they're publicized? What Democrats see in this, and perhaps they're overreading things and overestimating the underlying value of the facts, but what they do see, Christine, is a pattern that applied to former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and now Attorney General Jeff Sessions, that things are only conceded in public after they're publicized by reporters who are scratching and clawing to find out what, if any, contacts did go on or encounters happened between those who were involved with the Trump campaign and either officials or representatives of the Russian government. And when such disclosures are made, or more is learned about the context of conversations, as was true of the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, then they are acknowledged. But what Democrats keep asking is, if these encounters and these conversations are so benign, so completely innocent, why are not they disclosed up front? Why are they only conceded and admitted in public after they are revealed by those who are trying to find out more of the truth? And that's one of the answers the Attorney General doesn't have and this White House doesn't have.
And speaking of those reports that seem to be shedding light on some of these issues, there's another report that continues to drip out about various Trump associates having met with Kislyak, Major, including Carter Page. What do we know about that?
Well, we don't know as much as perhaps we would like to. And the one thing I have had conversations with those in the Trump campaign about, and it is their latest sort of general response to revelations that there were contacts and there were conversations, even though there had been hard and fast, near blanket denials during the campaign that there were no contacts of any kind. What they now sort of fall back on is, well, look, we were a very disorganized presidential campaign. When I say we, I'm using the royal we that those associated with the Trump campaign have used in conversations with me. We were really disorganized. We didn't have a lot of people who were constantly on the campaign. We had 3 different campaign managers, 3 different teams that operated under those 3 different campaign managers. Lots of people said they were speaking for or on behalf of or working with the campaign, that sometimes were, sometimes weren't. And so they say, in that vast array of disorganization, it's quite possible that these meetings occurred and that they were innocent and benign. What Democrats see is, wait a minute, don't hide behind the shield of either disorganization or incompetence. You were a campaign for the presidency of the United States. You at times, and specifically in the Republican National Committee platform, watered down language that was more hostile to the Russians than the language that ultimately emerged. and there was an ongoing conversation about what this policy, should Mr. Trump be elected, be if he becomes the next president of the United States. So don't claim you were simply incompetent or disorganized. People associated with the Trump campaign talk to people associated with the Russian government. What about and to what purpose? And that's the part of the story that we simply do not have enough facts about or light upon.
Obamacare was a major point in the Trump campaign, the Obamacare nightmare, as they refer to it. So what is the state of that proposed replacement plan, Major, and how's the administration working to gin up support with these types of events that Vice President Pence was at today?
Well, it's part of an ongoing conversation. The White House would like to have, building off what the White House regards as a very successful presidential speech to a joint session of Congress, where he was more specific about the underlying legislative goals he has set forth on the replacement of the Affordable Care Act than he was on any other domestic priority. And he wants Republicans in Congress, led by the House Republican leadership, to put this bill together, run it through the committee process, and pass it on the House floor to get it to the United States Senate, to begin the momentum behind both the replacement and the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. House Speaker Paul Ryan said today that his team and all the relevant committees are working hand in glove with the Trump White House to draft that legislation. That draft is still under wraps. Lots of House Republicans haven't seen it, and there are growing concerns among some conservatives in the House Republican Conference that when that draft emerges, there are going to be aspects of it either they don't like or simply cannot support. And that's a matter of legislative politics that's going on behind the scenes, because the House Republican leadership, as they draft this replacement for the Affordable Care Act, is trying to check with those various pockets of potential resistance among House Republicans, particularly fiscal conservatives, to see what they're willing to vote for and what their can't cross lines are. And that process is going on behind the scenes. And once this bill emerges, then we're going to see where the votes are and, most importantly, where the votes aren't.
CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett from the White House. Thanks, Major.